What do you think about her tweets?
This is the left 101. When it doesn't go my way, it's racist, and any black man or woman involved in the process who didn't agree with them, obviously they're irrelevant. So that was the diss. Just go wah. Just complain. I mean, that's what children do. They never can accept a decision. And affirmative action the case was even being brought up because Asian Americans felt that they were not getting a fair opportunity. So rich white people didn't have nothing to do.
Oh, you're absolutely going to love this one because the universe just delivered a crossover that nobody ever expected, yet somehow everyone secretly needed to witness. Picture this. AOC steps into the spotlight with full energy, passion blazing, and a fiery message she's ready to unleash on the world. The entire stage belongs to her, or so she thinks, until suddenly, out of nowhere, Tyrus appears, the man who practically walks around as a wrecking ball made of sarcasm. In an instant, he turns her big dramatic moment into a roast so unexpectedly sharp it felt like it needed its own parental advisory label. What happened next was so unbelievable it almost didn't feel real.
You don't have anything to talk about in terms of merit, you just blame it on rich white people. And it's been a cushion that's been allowed in this country for a long time. And now as you see more, that's the new pillow. My pillow's got nothing on the new pillow of blame rich white people, because you can rest your head on it in any argument. Bring any argument up with me. Anything. Ask me any question. How the Knicks doing this year? Well, why am I supposed to know that? I'm not a rich white person. See what I'm saying? Like,
you're enjoying this, so don't forget to subscribe because it truly helps in ways most people never realize. Politics has always thrived on big, flashy moments. The kind where someone steps forward, waves their hands like they're starring in a dramatic soap opera scene, and convinces their supporters that history is being rewritten right in front of them. Few people lean into this kind of theatrical performance more than AOC, who never simply walks into a room. She storms in with a level of intensity that radiates from every step, as if she's moments away from delivering the State of the Union, even when all she's doing is ordering a simple cup of coffee.
Unaffected or are completely out of touch of everything. This is a big country. Some people, regardless of high inflation, are still gonna fly to go. It has nothing to do with lower class Americans who are struggling to pay bills, or people just make their decisions. It's just they're so out of touch, and they worry about other things, the wrong things like pardons and perceptions and how they're looked at, instead of like just shutting up, step out of your little bubble. Maybe close the safe spaces, walk out on this crunchy green stuff called grass, and get involved in the world and see that
every word AOC speaks comes wrapped in pure drama, each point delivered with the urgency of someone warning the world that meteors might crash down tomorrow. But this time, she walked into a moment she simply couldn't control because the spotlight refused to stay on her. It shifted straight to the true star of the night. Tyrus. Yes, Tyrus, the man who can turn thick political tension into effortless comedy with nothing more than a single raised eyebrow, firing off punchlines that hit with the force of a full-body blow and leave the room gasping in surprise.
No, of course they didn't read the decision. And again, these are all successful men and women of color who all have educations, who are sitting on top of the mountain calling foul. Like, this is just the par for the course. It is just, what is the narrative? Oh, that's the way we're going with it? But it was nice to see white men get a break. You know what? Because you've had a rough year. They started blaming some stuff on white women, so you guys get a little bit of the feel.
And poor AOC never saw any of it coming, not even for a second, even though you'd expect a seasoned politician to know better than to overplay her hand when a master of sarcasm is waiting just off stage like a quiet storm ready to strike. But instead, she dove straight in with total confidence, convinced the crowd would walk away, inspired, enlightened, and maybe even ready to print her face on the $10 bill. Armed with statistics, dramatic pauses, and that trademark expression that practically announces, "I've cracked the code of humanity and only I can guide you," she charged forward with full force, unaware of the comedic disaster brewing behind her.
Fastest, and we have fan mail, and I just get listening to those Nate Silvers and these Saliza people just bites into this glorious show. AOC. What? She's kind of fun. In a silly but earnest, wrong but adorable way. She's like your daughter when she comes back from her first year at Brown, full of half-baked, half opinions, in need of some gentle, patient deprogramming. But people have to realize new faces doesn't mean new ideas.
She crafted her entire speech like it had been lifted straight out of a Marvel origin story, filled with looming climate disasters, widening income gaps, and unstoppable corporate greed, all presented in sweeping cinematic strokes that made every issue sound like the fate of humanity hung in the balance. As always, she placed herself at the center as the fearless heroine, standing tall against unseen villains hiding in the shadows, and if you squinted hard enough, you could practically hear the Avengers theme rising behind her dramatic gestures. When she lifted her hand at the perfect moment, it looked as if destiny itself had whispered in her ear, yet the audience still responded with nothing more than polite, almost mechanical applause, the kind people give only because they feel obligated. It wasn't roaring approval or heartfelt excitement, just courtesy clapping, a way for them to congratulate themselves for showing up. Still, AOC gazed over the crowd as if she'd just been honored with a thunderous standing ovation, but the truth is that overblown performances always leave a gap, a perfect setup for comedy, and that is exactly where Tyrus shines. He doesn't carry binders of stats, he doesn't stretch metaphors until they snap, and he definitely doesn't need to predict the end of the world just to get attention. His tool is something sharper, quicker, and raw in the moment. Pure, unpolished humor.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she responded to this ruling on Twitter as well. She says, if the Supreme Court was serious about their ridiculous color blindness claims, they would have abolished legacy admissions, aka affirmative action for the privileged. 70% of Harvard's legacy applicants are white. SCOTUS didn't touch that, which would have impacted them and their patrons. Does she have a point there?
She used the word ludicrous. That was cool. That was new. But again, it's the same argument. No matter what you're doing, that it's all white people's fault, and it's just such a great talking point, to the point where it's just literally, if it was a dying horse, would say please.
While AOC stacked paragraph after paragraph like she was building a tower destined to wobble, Tyrus sat back with the calm confidence of someone waiting to knock over a Jenga stack with one perfectly timed sarcastic tap. But before we get to that moment, it's worth pausing to appreciate just how hard AOC pushed to control the room. She leaned into the microphone like it was her closest confidant, pacing the stage with that overly serious stride politicians love to use, hitting each pause like she was auditioning for a TED Talk she desperately wanted to nail. And every time she paused, hoping the room would erupt in applause, the audience instead delivered that awkward, half-hearted clapping. The kind that says, we're not totally sure if you're done talking, but here's something so it doesn't feel silent. You know the look, a mix of pity and mild amusement, like watching a friend nervously attempt karaoke for the first time while everyone tries to be supportive. The truth is, the harder AOC leaned into her own intensity, the more she opened herself up to the one force that could slice clean through the theatrics. And that force was about to arrive. Not wrapped in statistics, not drenched in dramatic speeches, but swinging in with the hammer of humor that only Tyrus can wield.
Introduced a fresh idea or issue in her life. The reason why she gets along with Bernie is because she's like an 80-year-old leftist in a used bookstore. I mean, she may look fresh, but she's as stale as an abandoned futon on the street. It's like, I listen to her, I go, I heard that at Berkeley in 1983. So their problem is, and the reason why they don't have any ideas is they operate on.
The irony in all of this is that AOC thrives on control, building her entire identity on shaping the narrative exactly the way she wants it, setting the stage, choosing the rhythm, and expecting the audience to follow along like loyal supporters hanging on to every word. But humor refuses to obey those rules. Humor doesn't care about pacing, structure, or dramatic arcs. It strikes fast, cuts deep, and once laughter fills the room, the serious tone she relies on completely collapses. And there sat Tyrus, armed with nothing more than a figurative slingshot, fully prepared to knock out the first brick and send her entire performance tumbling down. The room wasn't tense because her words were stirring hearts. It was tense because everyone was waiting to see what twist would hit next. The beauty of moments like this is that humiliation doesn't always arrive with shouting or confrontations. Sometimes it slides in quietly, with perfect timing, through someone casually pointing out how fragile the whole performance really was. That's exactly where Tyrus shines. He doesn't charge in with anger or overwhelm the room with outrage. He dismantles everything with something far sharper, quicker, and much more devastating. Sharp-edged humor that lands like a clean strike.
AOC is taking a break from doing nothing to get into a beef with the Twitter chief. On Tuesday, she tweeted, LMAO at a billionaire earnestly trying to sell people on the idea that free speech is actually an $8 a month subscription plan. That's a reference to Musk's plan to charge people $8 a month for verified blue checkmark status. But he hit back tweeting, your feedback is appreciated. Now pay $8.
The stage couldn't have been set more perfectly. AOC was deep in full drama mode, riding the excitement of her own performance, completely unaware that the room was slowly slipping out of her hands like sand drifting through open fingers. The applause had faded into polite little taps, the eye rolls were piling higher than her talking points, and Tyrus sat there practically glowing with anticipation, wearing the expression of someone who knows his punchline is going to land like a knockout hit. And when he finally leaned forward, everything shifted in an instant. But here's the twist. AOC wasn't even in the room to face him, and somehow that made the whole moment even funnier and sharper. Roasting someone face to face is expected, but roasting them when they aren't present with that playful edge that makes people laugh and nod all at once, that's a completely different sport, and Tyrus plays it like a professional. That's exactly how he went after AOC, treating her carefully staged political performance not like a revolutionary movement, but more like a late-night improv sketch that stayed on stage far too long. His first jab came fast and clean, the idea that AOC can't walk into any room without instantly turning it into a dramatic lecture about civilization being only 3 tweets away from falling apart.
Says AOC has 61% approval ratings
Yes.
for Democrats, right? The highest of any Democrat unless they've been elected president. So if your new brand ambassador is going to be AOC, then I think it's more than just...
Tyrus joked that AOC probably practices her speeches in the mirror before brushing her teeth, arms flying everywhere while statistics swirl around her, leaving her toothbrush looking completely traumatized by the chaos. Just that image alone was enough to shatter every bit of her carefully built stage presence. From there, he went straight for her favorite habit, those heavy metaphors she loves to use, tearing them apart with smooth, precise humor. He teased that if she spills a simple glass of water, she might claim it's undeniable proof of rising sea levels. If her Uber runs late, clearly that must be corporate greed taking aim at society. And if her phone battery dips below 20%, well, that must be capitalism failing humanity in real time. Suddenly, all those dramatic comparisons she relies on stopped sounding bold, and instead began to feel like pages ripped from a stressed-out drama student's notebook. According to Tyrus, AOC could be explaining her lunch order, and still make it sound like she's announcing the cure for all human suffering. Yes, I'll take the avocado toast, he teased, because nothing captures the struggles of our generation quite like overpriced guacamole. What makes Tyrus so sharp in moments like this is that he doesn't need to exaggerate. He simply takes what's already there, her tone, her habits, her constant urge to turn everyday moments into a political crusade, and shines a bright spotlight on it until all the seriousness collapses into pure, lighthearted silliness.
Explains it. They're not meant for you, right? But then you have to ask, okay, then what is this debt forgiveness? Who is it meant for? And when you look at the data, it's upper, white, middle class, liberal women. This ain't welfare, right? These are well-to-do people. It's a bribe for Democrats on the backs of plumbers, truckers, and everyone else who actually does a real job, unlike me. AOC is the symbol of the entitled sponge. She complains about student loans.
What once passed for strong leadership suddenly looked more like pure melodrama, and once you start seeing it that way, you simply can't unsee it. Tyrus didn't stop at her speeches. He went straight for her social media habits too, because AOC treats Twitter like it's her own personal presidential podium. He joked that if the Wi-Fi ever went down in Washington, she would probably declare it the greatest attack on democracy in modern history, typing in all caps about a nationwide conspiracy just because her Instagram Live froze for a moment. With that picture in everyone's mind, the weight of her message melted into complete absurdity, making her seem less like a congresswoman rallying a movement and more like a comedian describing a dramatic neighbor with a flair for chaos. But Tyrus wasn't finished, not even close, because he saved one of his sharpest jabs for the contradiction between AOC's constant alarmism and her perfectly curated, polished lifestyle. After all, nothing says the planet is burning quite like showing up to a climate change photo op wearing a full designer outfit from head to toe.
She owns a French bulldog. Thanks to Cat Temp, I know everything about French bulldogs. And one thing I know, they are so expensive They're more expensive than any college tuition. You got to take care of them. They're adorable dogs. But she owns a Tesla and she owns a French Bulldog, and she wants you or your dad, the electrician, to forgive her student loan. That's BS. Turn in the Tesla. Sell the dog.
Tyrus pointed out the irony that for someone who constantly paints capitalism as the great villain, AOC seems to navigate and benefit from it with remarkable ease, a detail that hits even harder because it rings painfully true. The sarcasm practically shaped itself as he spoke, but his sharpest jab landed when he compared listening to her speeches to being trapped in a lecture hall where the professor lost the syllabus weeks ago, but still refuses to stop talking. You don't know where the lesson started, you can't tell where it's going, yet somehow you're expected to take organized notes like it all makes sense. That became his shorthand for her entire speaking style. Loud, winding, dramatic, and ultimately exhausting to sit through. And the best part, she wasn't even there to offer a reaction or clap back, giving Tyrus even more room to stretch out, poke fun, and twist the knife just a little deeper without a single interruption. Without a live rebuttal, every punchline lingered longer, landing with extra force, proving he didn't need a stack of facts or intense debate points. All he needed was his sarcasm, and that alone was more than enough to reshape the room's entire mood.
I mean, $80 per theater. I mean, I made $80 in a theater, and there wasn't even a movie playing.
Wow. What do you mean?
I don't know. You know, it's no surprise. Who would go see a movie that's the opposite of entertaining? There's nothing entertaining about that. Michael Moore's colonoscopy is more entertaining than that because there's probably more twists. But it does show you how great it is to be a progressive in a liberal biased culture. She really doesn't do her job, right? She makes movies, she goes to galas, she sits for glossy butt-kissing interviews in GQ. And
by the time Tyrus wrapped up his takedown, the polished image of AOC as an untouchable force had unraveled into something much closer to an ongoing running joke, the kind that keeps getting funnier every time you think about it. Every exaggerated gesture she relied on, every overly dramatic metaphor, every dire warning about the world ending, all of it suddenly transformed into perfect material for punchlines. The real humiliation didn't come from shouting or confrontation. It came from something far more subtle but far more damaging, the complete reframing of her persona. What once felt like authority and confidence now looked more like parody, and once the audience saw her through that new lens, there was simply no going back. The shift was instant, and the impact was impossible to ignore.